Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of StartupJab, Return of the Office Hours. That's right, because it's episode 6. I'm Jason Nellis.
I'm Teague Hopkins.
And we're here to help. We're here to just help people with their startup needs, whatever that might be. So if you have questions about anything ranging from how to scale your business, questions about a product you're working on, you feel like you want to come and say hello to two really entertaining dudes in glasses, we're here. We're happy to help. You guys in the chat, you're welcome to ask questions there. We've got the seats open down here in our Blab chat spot. So come on in and say hi if you have anything. We've got some great people here today. We've got Seth, who I may have inadvertently made fun of about his about hair. I don't know if I really made fun of him, but now I definitely have. I feel like I've insulted him now. Sorry.
Can't take you anywhere.
You really can't. We've got Kiki here, who's always, she's pretty smart cookie. I don't care what you say, Teague. I think she's all right.
Oh, you're such a troublemaker.
I am. It's true. It's what everybody likes about me. We've got the other Jason of the phenomenal beard. Guys, we've got open seats. We've got an open chat room. We'd love to have you jump in. In the meantime, while we're waiting for folks to jump in, Teague, how are things with you and your business?
Things are going well.
That's
not much new to share.
That's a really crappy answer. Come on, man. There's got to be something going on.
It is a pretty crappy answer. I don't really have anything interesting to contribute.
Okay. All right. Well, we signed 2 new clients in the last couple of weeks and are doing some new videos, which I'm very excited about.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Feeling good about that. It's a challenge signing new clients, as anyone can tell you. Well, you know that better than I do. You've been doing this longer. Haven't heard about your... Kiki is asking about Teague's consulting business, mostly about the exposition thing. Teague?
Expedition.
There it is.
Yeah, I'm going to blame that on autocorrect.
There you go.
Mostly the reason you haven't heard me talk about the consulting is because there's not as much about it that I can share. One of the things that happens when I work with companies is that sometimes they don't like to share what they're working on. So they don't like me to talk about the exciting stuff that they're doing as much as I would love to, because it's not out yet.
Well, rather than talk about, let's do it instead of talking about your clients, which privacy is important, talk about your philosophy. When somebody brings you into a company to help them solve a specific problem, what's your approach? And don't say lean. We all know we're both big lean guys, but just from a practical perspective, how do you identify their problems and help them solve it?
Sure. Well, you told me not to say lean, so I guess I'll just describe what lean is instead of actually naming it.
That works too.
So I tend to, when I work with larger organizations, there's often a whole set of challenges, and the first step is to figure out what challenges they have and know they have, and what challenges they think they have that they don't actually have, and what challenges they don't know that they have that are actually the real problem. And in a lot of cases... Seth hears me on that one. In a lot of cases, the easiest starting point is to start by talking about lean and to start talking about the major types of risk in new ventures. So for those of you who don't know the consulting that I do, I typically work with startup executives and leaders in larger organizations that are tasked with innovation, whether that's an R&D group or a skunkworks team, or whether they're just trying to create new lines of business. And
what was that?
That was my phone. I'm going to put that on silent. Sorry, guys.
That was a rather cheerful little notification. That was quite nice.
Yeah, it is. So the place to start with when I talk about risks in new ventures is the 3 major types of risk. The tech risk, which is, can we actually build it? The market risk, which is, does anybody want it if we do manage to build it? And the ego risk, which is, can we actually execute to our full potential? Oftentimes companies think that the tech risk is the biggest of these. And in most cases, it is not, in fact. Unless you are truly creating something that has never been done before, most web apps are remixing things that other people have already done. And so unless you're creating a novel algorithm or doing something in biotech or that sort of thing, tech risk is generally negligible. It's very much it's sort of a red herring. And more often the case is, something can get built, but maybe the wrong thing is getting built and then nobody actually buys it. And that's where the market risk comes in. And that's what Lean Startup is designed to address, is the challenge of building something that nobody actually wants, instead of figuring that out before you start. And then the ego risk piece of things is there's a whole set of these challenges that I'm sure a lot of folks have encountered, that stem from the challenges of just, being human in environments of extreme uncertainty. And so there's the challenges of dealing with failure and dealing with understanding what is and what is simply our perception of things. So what is the objective truth of a situation, and what is our subjective perspective from one perspective. That
seems really philosophical. I don't think that's what we signed up for there, buddy.
No, that's fair.
Doesn't feel right to me.
It starts out pretty philosophical, but when you start getting down into the specifics, you start recognizing a lot of the cases. It's things like it's things like the launch and forget, where companies will create something and then just push it out the door and then fail to support or iterate at all.
Yeah.
It's things like arrival fallacy. It's that idea that once we finally sign that contract or once we finally launch this product, everything will be different. Everything will be amazing. There's a lot of cognitive biases tied up in it. And much of that is that, our brains have evolved over many, many thousands of years to be good at certain things and good at recognizing certain patterns. And when your life depended on being able to recognize that there's a tiger hiding in the jungle before he pounces on you, those mental heuristics were really valuable, and the shortcuts helped out a lot. And now some of those shortcuts don't necessarily help us as much. We start to see patterns where they don't necessarily exist.
So in case it wasn't clear to the audience, we hang out with Teague because he's the smart one and I'm the loud one. No, I think that was a very thorough understanding of how you approach things. I think I've always been impressed that you do a very smart and thorough job when, on the things that we've worked on together, really analyzing it from a top-down perspective, which I think is really cool. Whereas I am forcing myself to be a little bit less thrown against the wall, which doesn't work. I know. I was shocked too. Cool. Does anybody have any specific questions that they want to jump in on? We have the chat open. Got an open seat here. Happy to have anybody as a guest if they're interested.
Bring us your biggest challenges.
Indeed. Brittany,
let us.
Would love to hear an update on how things are going. I'm going to get you on this damn thing one of these days. Good to see everyone one day. Apparently not today. Well, it's good to see everyone. Thanks for coming, Hannah, Mark. We've got Raphael in here. Katie's here too. We got a whole smorgasbord of people. Adam is here, of course. Clifton, who I see at all of our stuff. Clifton, you're the man. Thanks for coming by as usual. Guys, look, we I'm happy to share stories. Dwayne, I didn't see you there. My apologies. Good to see you too. I'm happy to share stories of challenges that I've got. I know Teague has some as well. We certainly don't want to make this all about us, though. So feel free to ask if you have something specific you want to work on. In the meantime, though, I don't know, Teague, what would you say are some of the challenges that you hear most commonly from startup folks these days? And I suppose that could be as open as the person who's starting their own consultancy versus somebody who's really trying to build a tech company. I don't know. What are some of the common things you're hearing?
Well, I had a call with an entrepreneur earlier today who was asking me about, started out asking about how to write a book and how to promote a book. And we got around to the idea that, the issue with, I think it's Seth Godin says, the key to promoting a book is to start 3 years before you write the book, which is, a little tongue in cheek, but also pretty accurate, right?
Not far off.
You do kind of need to build an audience and to market it the same way that you would anything else. And so we talked about, how do you start off building an audience? How do you build a community if you have nothing, right? Where do you, what's step one?
Profit.
No, that's step 3,
Oh, right,
where step
right.
2 is question marks, right?
Right.
Step 1, build audience.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And step 3, profit. Yeah. So my go-to for the early stage building an audience is Kevin DeWalt's stuff about helpful marketing, which you are also familiar with.
It's a cornerstone of my philosophy as well. And I think I can, for those of you who don't want to go and do all the reading about it, we can boil it down to a simple statement, which is be really, actually, no kidding, helpful. That's really it. That is actually it.
And it's, the difference between one person who you have actually legitimately helped and 10 people who are just kind of interested and joined your mailing list because is night and day, right? I mean, that if you build a small audience of people who you actually have legitimately helped, they become great promoters of you. And and it's, you could call it karma, you can call it reciprocity, whatever it is. It's a great way to go about being in the world.
100%. No, I actually, it's kind of fortuitous that you mentioned that. I actually had a call earlier this week with someone who many months ago, I gave them some what's turned out to be helpful advice regarding their startup and some of their brand positioning and some of the things that they were challenging themselves with and were looking for outside help on. Knowing that at the time it wasn't going to generate much, and knowing, sort of in the back of my head that really it wasn't going to turn into anything substantial, helping, certainly something I was just trying to do because at the time I had nothing else going on. Why not? Cut to earlier this week, yesterday, in fact, where I get a phone call out of the blue that they're looking for a marketing firm to manage a project that needs to happen in the next month. And then over the course of the next few months that they're looking for an agency of record. And hey, that's what we do. So, it does come back. But that's literally my only example. Everybody else hates me. So.
Well, I
These are
I doubt that.
This is full of tears, just so we're clear. Delicious, salty tears. Helping people. Is that what we've changed this to? Story time. How about times that too much growth or focus on growth too early harmed the business? Ooh, that's a good one.
Much growth early. So
such growth, early results.
Exactly. I see this one a lot in consulting firms.
Okay.
I see particularly because, and it's true with a lot of different kinds of companies, but in consulting firms, it's easy to focus on get more sales, sell more work, hire more people. And in a consulting firm, your only advantage is the quality of the people you have. And so
sorry, people are talking to me as I'm. Anyway.
I can see that. I can see you looking away. It's kind of distracting, but
I'm sorry. Here, hold on.
I was going to gloss over
a little bit of this and some bird,
some shadow puppets.
Oh, why not?
Yeah. But when you see companies growing at the expense of culture, you know that it's the beginning of a downward spiral.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of, they're getting more people in, but they're not doing anything to keep the really good ones. And so eventually the really good people start to leave, and then you're stuck with a lot of people who are just kind of mediocre, and then you can't get any more good people in the top of the funnel, and it's just this downward spiral from there.
Yeah. I think I think that a lot of what you say is very smart, but I think that particularly is a good point. I think one of the challenges that I see in too early growth and too early acceleration is the ad hoc nature of a lot of processes. I think one of the things that I've seen a lot is that sense of we got to get it done. We got to get it done fast. Let's just hack it together and make it happen. And it isn't so much that I have a specific story to share about a company, because really that's just in poor taste. But I do think that there's a lot of really smart examples out there of companies, a lot of really strong examples of companies that put into process a lot of things without really building out the process. I will say this as an example to be somewhat general about it, but one of my earlier employers, who rhymes with Lulu, there you go. See, I figured it out.
That's good.
One of the things that they had to do early on was build out a very robust, comprehensive video streaming service with very little to go on, uncharted territory in the direction that they were taking it. And about a year and a half into the public offering of the service, some of the development team realized that there were some institutionalized bad processes that were actually it was actually hampering Hulu's growth. It was, damn it, I said the name. But it was hampering the growth to the point where they actually had to rebuild the system while everything was still live. They couldn't pull anything from production. They had obviously a development, environment, but it's not the same thing as actually, being able to shut everything down, replace it, boot it up, make sure it worked, and then go live with it again. So downtime was not an option. And it was an incredible technical challenge. I mean, they reduced the code base by some obscene amount, like 50% by the time they were done, because there just been so many different hacks put in place that by the time you took into account all of the hard-coded things that had been placed in, it was impossible to get anything done. So I suppose in that instance, it's a great example of something that ended up working out, that it didn't end up keeping and killing something. But I've seen lots of companies that have done this, particularly in the first 2 years, where they institutionalize this particular process without really considering how to build it out in the future. Then they get to a point where they need to be able to scale it to match, this bigger growth step, and they can't take it, and they fall on their face and eventually fall apart. It's just as bad in the agency world and in the creative world as it is in the technical world.
Yeah, totally. Dwayne in the chat asks, what are your thoughts on design thinking? So my take on design thinking, and in my intro to Lean talks, I have one of these slide decks that lists, here are 7 different things that all approach solving the same problem as Lean Startup, but from different contexts. And design thinking is on there. I think that there's a lot of overlap between design thinking and Lean Startup. Design thinking comes from more of a design background, and Lean Startup comes from more of a startup business background, a little bit of a tech background. Mm-hmm. I think also that design thinking is a nice dovetail for Lean Startup. It's often you can look at it as sort of the first half of the cycle is design thinking, and the second half is Lean Startup. Design thinking focuses a lot on the ideation and mm-hmm. the initial interaction with customers, and Lean Startup focuses on then validating that once you have something to validate.
Yeah.
So I think they work very well. They work very well hand in hand.
I think validate should be 3 words that you have tattooed on your bicep here or something. I really feel like, truthfully, I mean, I should just, every time I do Startup Weekend, I should just put it on my flipping forehead. I should have a hat. I should do like Frank from 30 Rock. It's just a hat that says validate.
Well, I love the T-shirts that LSM gives us that say invalidate my assumptions.
Yeah.
That's just great, because that's exactly what you're going for, right? You want to have those conversations with people where they say, you know what, that thing that you're just assuming and like blowing right past, that thing is wrong.
Yeah, or you haven't proven that it's right to the point where I don't think that you're a liar.
Yes.
Anyway, cool. Any other questions, guys? Would love to. Interesting that you used to work for media. Would love your thoughts on our new product. Well, Seth, I will take a look at your product. Ooh. Out-of-the-box solution for your branded network. Well, I'll definitely have to take a look at this. Site is in the works. I'll try not to judge you for it, I promise. I mean, I'll judge, but for many other reasons, for many other things. Looks like an OTT. Interesting. Okay, I'll definitely have to check this out. Yeah, I'm all about OTT. I mean, it's not, I think, excuse me, that would be over the top. So that would be your Roku boxes, your Xbox 360s, your PlayStations, etc.
That would be leapfrogging cable and streaming directly over the internet.
Yes, indeed. Boy, can I just say, by the way, that it's only on Blab that I suddenly get 40,000 phone calls. So either you've all found my phone number, which would be really freaking creepy. Yeah, anyway.
It's not only on Blab. You're just that popular.
There you go. Furkan, you came up in a meeting earlier today. I didn't know if you knew that. The CTO of Blab is here joining us. Good to see you, sir. You, I believe, may have been in a chat with some of my friends from DC United who said to say hello. And they said that you were lovely. So there you go. That's right. DC United. I'm name dropping here, kids. I'm seriously, I'm desperate for attention. Somebody tell me they love me. Seth, so that felt good and sad too. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. We've been doing some work for them, and we're hoping to do more. I'm pretty excited for it. Cool, guys. Well, does anybody want to come in and just give us an update on how things are going for them?
Anybody have a particular challenge they want us to take a crack at?
I mean, we're pretty smart guys. Teak's smart. I need a haircut. Between the two of us.
Between the two of us, we both need haircuts.
There you go. I got to clean this up. It looks like rats were sewn to my face. That's not fair. That's not fair to rats.
I agree, Kiki. That's disgusting.
Kiki knows where it's at. All right. Well, it sounds like maybe we've scared them into not asking questions. I can keep talking about me. I'm super good at that. Teague's actually pretty good at talking about me too. So, just saying.
So we're saying if you don't ask us questions, we're just going to talk about Jason all day.
And nobody wants that.
Please ask us questions.
I'm begging you. Oh my goodness. You know what, Teague? I don't know. They must have nothing to want to talk about. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
How do you suggest an in-person meeting?
There we go. Gracefully.
Usually I say, would you like to meet?
There you go.
Or something along those lines. Give us a little more context, Kiki. What's the challenge around suggesting an in-person meeting?
I want to make sure we talk about Brittany's question too. And Seth, we'd love to have you jump in a few minutes. Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay. We've got a couple of questions coming in here. So Kiki asks, how do you suggest an in-person meeting gracefully when you've been communicating online and there's a lot of distance between you, like states worth of distance? Jason, you want to take a shot at that?
I would say probably just, definitely one of those, just ask up front. I don't see why not. If you've been talking long enough and you feel as though it's worth engaging in, then perhaps there's some opportunity there. But I would say that you have to be careful of schedule. I would say, you don't want to be like, yeah, I can do tomorrow and Tuesday, and somebody's like, wow, that doesn't work for me, and then you've lost momentum. Don't just show up. I would absolutely recommend against just showing up, only because you want to plan ahead. Meet in public. Have a friend check in with you. Make sure that they're not a creepy person. That kind of stuff. Absolutely. Oh, so this isn't Tinder 101. Yeah. Yeah. Is there reason and benefit in person? Sorry. Is there reason in person would bring more benefit than online? That's a good question. I would say that I do my best work in person. T, would you agree?
Yeah, I think there's always trade-offs. There's the cost of setting up an in-person meeting, and even just like within DC, I used to do, whenever somebody wanted some advice, that I'd meet them for coffee downtown. The challenge with that is that in DC that's a 2-hour commitment, right? Because it's half an hour on the metro to get downtown. It's an hour of chatting with somebody, and it's a half an hour to get home. And so now I do most of my office hours stuff on Skype or Google Hangouts, or now Blab, because I can end up helping 4 people in that 2-hour time frame instead, which actually ties nicely into Brittany's question about how do you find a balance between being helpful versus giving away the farm.
Yes, but I think I have to insist that we cannot address this question until she joins us live in the stream. I'm going to force her into this. I only do it because I know it embarrasses her. So finding a balance between helping and giving away the farm. I think that giving away the farm is a little bit of a perception question. You have to make somebody else feel as though they're getting the farm, even if you're not actually giving it away. And that's not necessarily to say that you have to provide something of physical value. I don't think that it's, one of the things that I think Teague and I both do fairly well is that we do things like this frequently, right? We're happy to give our advice, and it's worth exactly what you're paying for it, right? I mean, nobody here is expecting to get genius advice out of 2 guys who are hosting a thing on Blab. But at the same time, we're trying to actually provide genuine value to you. We want you to feel comfortable that we know what we're doing and that we're trustworthy. And so part of that is that somebody has to take the first step, right? Somebody, the old adage of everybody remember the Mexican standoff, they're all popular in Pulp Fiction. Somebody's got to lower their gun first. And in the case of giving away the farm, I'm mixing metaphors left and right here. Holy crap.
It's great.
You know what? I'm going to ride it to the end. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to lower your gun first, then you're going to offer the farm at a 20% premium. I don't know where that one went.
And then the metaphor train of thought crashes into the
syllabic wall of destitution. Wait, damn it. No. Bottom line, I think one of the things you have to be aware of is that you can't give away something that you're not willing to give away, right? You can't give. So I mean, you don't want to give away something that should normally cost money. Advice is always free. Advice is a great place to start.
And that's actually about where I draw the line too. Is I'm always happy to give anybody advice, and I generally don't charge for that. Occasionally, if I'm doing larger consulting things, it gets built in, but I won't do it for you.
Yeah,
and that's where I draw the line. Is if you want me to do something for you, then I need to get paid for my time.
Yeah,
I'm always happy to give advice and to answer questions, and generally, there's a level of I'm happy to answer questions, certainly in public, and occasionally, I do private office hours as well for some folks. Although I've started, more and more taking the opportunity to record office hours stuff and publish that, because one of the things that sometimes is worth paying for is to have me consult on something that is not ready for public consumption.
We have somebody in the queue. I want to make sure that we answer this question first, just to finish it. So yeah, pardon me. I think that it's definitely important to, I think Teague's right. You draw the line, you make sure that you're giving something of value without actually giving something away that you should be selling. I also think, in dovetailing that actually with Kiki's question, that at a certain point you do actually have to put yourself out there for sales. You have to take risks. There is no risk-free way of doing this. So I don't think that what you should do is be very possessive. What I think you should do is be very incremental. Apparently we've lost our person in the seat, so maybe that's not as much of an issue. But no, I think that in any of this, I went through this with somebody last week. Business is risk. It's inherent in everything we do. There is no such thing as a 100% safe, sure thing. If there was, everyone would do it. Even CDs, which everybody says are the safest way to grow your money, still are inherent with risk. Savings accounts are inherently risky. I mean, there is risk in everything. So there is always going to be a time where you're going to lose out on some of these opportunities. But it doesn't matter. It's the fact that you're in the game where you're going to see the higher returns over time. As long as you limit that which is valuable in what you're giving away.
Yeah, I think there's a couple other things that, it's if it doesn't cost you anything to provide something, then it's easier to give it away. But also, you don't want to be giving away anything where you can't actually afford to give away something that is of the quality that people would get if they bought from you. So you don't want to do a bad job on it. You just want to do a smaller job on it. Right. And that's because if you're giving away stuff that's substandard quality, then people are getting a bad impression. They're not going to purchase from you afterwards. But if you're giving away stuff that is just smaller but still top quality, a lot of times you'll find people saying, like, that was amazing. What can I buy from you now?
Yeah, absolutely.
And having an answer to that is, as Ryan Moser in the chat says, half a job, not a half-assed job.
Which is absolutely important distinction.
That is exactly correct.
Kiki, to your question about in terms of bridging the gap, there is a point at which digital conversation is not good. You have to make the effort. I think if you can see a business opportunity to, seal the deal, so to speak, in making the travel, then it's worth the expense. Don't show up, randomly. You don't want to be the guy who's like, I'm here, let's talk. Like, that never works. I actually had friends who would fly to LA and would try to just show up for a job interview that, of course, was never going to happen.
No, bad plan.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about with Hulu. I mean, like, they'd show up to movie studios or TV studios or, stuff like that, and it just wouldn't work. So, it's not great, Bob. Not great.
Plan things.
Yes.
Planning is good.
Yes. How horrible, Kiki. That would be correct. Well, welcome, guys. For those of you that are just joining us now, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. We've got the rooms. Open here, so if you want to jump into one of the two spots below, happy to have you. Looking for people who want help. Happy to offer it. Otherwise, we will just keep talking. Seth wants to jump in. Seth, hit us, brother.
Hey guys. So as
I owe you an apology for the follicle comments I've made earlier.
Oh, that's quite all right. I'm used to it. I like it.
He's got the beard going now.
Yeah, I have the beard. If I don't have the beard, I look like 3 or something like that. So
yeah.
So anyways, I have a question. As some of you might know, I'll give you a little backstory. But Mubs and I are starting this project. It's called Creators Log. Teague, you're in there. Jason, I don't know if you're in there or not, but we are starting alpha.
Yeah.
And basically, Creators Log is a place where creators can go and create updates and keep their community in the loop based on their content. It's like a cross between Dribbble, Medium, and LinkedIn, I would say. Mm-hmm. So we're in alpha right now, and my question is, what do you think a successful alpha is, and when do you transition from alpha to beta?
Teague, this is a little bit more your area of expertise.
Sure. So I think that alpha, beta, launch are all semantic at this point, because we are in a sort of post retail software world. You're always pushing updates. No software is ever done. It's always just the current version, and so then we're moving on to the next version. And at some point you say like, okay, we're no longer calling it an alpha. We're going to call it a beta now.
Right.
I'm waiting for the first group to start calling them gammas. But that's the third one, right?
Alpha, beta, delta,
gamma, delta.
I don't even know.
Delta's
I
fourth.
Stopped after beta.
I think gamma's third.
Whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna have so after your beta,
you fraternity. I don't know these things.
Yeah, we just I think we're trying to nail down what a successful MVP looks like, and then we'll probably open it up to the community. So
yeah, you've walked into one of my favorite pet peeves, which is when you say MVP, what do you mean?
That's good. Until I'm not cringing at some design flaws and Mubs, and there's no errors, no bugs. That's an MVP.
No, they're just all features. Yeah.
Those two things will probably never happen.
Right.
So I would caution you on using that as the having no bugs. If that was the criteria for launching, you're probably never going to launch.
Yeah.
But so the reason I like to ask about what do you mean when you say MVP is because many people mean many different things when they say that, and I want to make sure that we're talking about when we say minimum viable product. What do we mean by that? So some people mean the minimum viable product is the version that I'm going to put into beta. Some people mean the minimum viable product is a paper prototype that I'm just going to sit down with people and show them and walk them through it. Some people mean, my minimum viable product is a set of survey questions that I'm going to sit down and ask people in person so I can hear what they think of the problem that I'm trying to solve before I actually go build anything at all.
Right.
So with that in mind, it sounds like you're sort of at the stage of there's a problem that you think exists and you've built some stuff and you want to. What's interesting is you're defining readiness based on how you guys feel about it rather than necessarily how customers feel about it.
Right. Well, I think normally I don't know if you know Mub's background or anything, but he's like the number one maker on Product Hunt. So basically the old way of us like hacking on things was, do it in a weekend and just push it out.
Yeah.
And then we just constantly update it. No big deal. This is kind of like our baby right now. And we're trying to do it
dangerous.
We're trying to do it in like I don't want to say slow, but we're doing it in a strategic way for launching. And I guess it's a little different for us. We work in software shops anyways.
Yeah.
You know that. So, when it's the customer, it's easier for a customer to say, or a client to say, okay, we have, 2 weeks for this sprint, and then we'll just push our updates. Like that's.
Yeah. I think some people get stuck in the realm of perfect a little too often, particularly when it comes to something that they really do care about. I mean, if it's worked for you in the past to come up with an idea, launch it, and then bug fix and iterate as you go, why wouldn't you take that position this time? The fact that it's important to you, the fact that you have a real emotional stake in it, shouldn't change your approach to it, because if your approach has worked in the past, then what you're expressing is not concern and strategy. What you're actually expressing is just fear and anxiety. And those are two very different things, right? I mean,
well, and as Jason just said, like the wording was very particular and accurate. That it's not that it should change the way that you work on it. It's just that it does.
Right.
And that's part of the challenge is, when you're emotionally invested in something, that's when the ego risk comes up, right? That's when it becomes very difficult to separate, how you feel about the product from how it's actually doing. And that's, one of the biggest problems I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is that challenge of, you're at a place where you want it to meet your standards before you put it out there. And that may be waiting too long, right? It may be that you need the contact with customers early on so that they can get you to course correct on the couple of things that really matter.
I would in fact use Blab as a great example, because they launched it and they went, there's a whole bunch of shit that's fucked up here. We're recording. I totally just screwed that up. Oh, well, it's too late now.
Our whole podcast is going to have an explicit tag.
I'll be honest with you. I'm totally okay with that. But they basically said, this is out in the world. We're going to get feedback from people and fix and iterate or not as we want to, but let's get some feedback, right? Let's get people telling us what works and what doesn't. I mean, one of the things that you have to realize is that you're taking both a technologist approach to what you're doing and, understanding the technology, building it, magnifying what needs to be magnified and adjusting what needs to adjust. There's also kind of a creative artistic side of it that takes over. And unlike what I'm guessing, I see the guitar back there, right? I assume you play, right? I mean, what do you play?
I don't play. This is our office. Where I'm at, Glory.
Well, that's a beautiful office.
Thank you.
It's pretty nice.
As any artist will tell you, there is no such thing as perfection. You do it to the point that it's, performable, and then you fix as you go. And I think what you guys are experiencing is a little bit of that, like, I got to get the piano piece perfect, right? I got to make this guitar solo spot on perfect, or it's never good enough. And it's never good enough then in that case. So if you feel comfortable with it, if it's usable, if you can get some honest and, useful feedback from launching it to the public, launch it. Don't call it an alpha, call it a beta, get it out into the world and see what happens. At worst, you're no better off than when you started, and that gives you valuable feedback about what direction to go next.
It's true. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, man. Happy to help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll jump out.
Okay.
I gotta get back to work.
We'll see you later.
All right,
man.
Thanks, man.
Yep, anytime. Yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
Perfection's the enemy of everything.
All things in moderation.
Well, I think that there's value in setting a high bar, and I think that there's value in, striving for more. I think ambition is good, but there is no perfect. And I think that I see a lot of people who get stuck in perfect. So, yeah. Anyway. Well, guys, I've got another 20 minutes. I don't know what your schedule looks like, T, but we've got time. So if folks want to jump in.
Yeah, we're going to go for another 20 minutes. Yeah. Anybody who's got questions, feel free to hop in.
Yeah. Let's see. Who do we want to call out and tease right now? Teague, I would ask you about if you are interested in sharing just what are your thoughts on finding co-founders?
Yes, the finding co-founders question. So there's two variants on that. Mm-hmm. One variant is how do you find technical co-founders? And the other variant is never asked. Really, like almost never.
So in other words, how do you find schmucks like me? Got it.
Okay. It's the how do I find a business co-founder? How often have you heard a technologist say that? Right? Like it doesn't really.
That's
happen.
True.
And I'm exaggerating a little bit to make a point, but the point is little bit, very tiny bit. But the point is, very few people think that they can learn the technology and build things with code and do the technology piece of things. Everybody thinks that they can run a business.
Right.
And part of that is when you screw up the technology thing, you get immediate feedback that it's not working, right? The code doesn't compile or there's a bug or you can tell right away that it's not working. But when you screw up running a business, you often don't find out until 5 years later when you run the business into the ground.
Yeah.
Or maybe not 5 years, maybe less than that, right? So a lot of the a lot of the challenge of how do I find a co-founder when you're looking for a technical co-founder is to figure out how to prove to them that you are actually somebody who knows how to run the business side of things. And a lot of times that means showing up with customers already in tow, because very few programmers like to build something if nobody's ever going to use it. And so if you can prove that you've got people waiting to build it, waiting to use this thing that you just need built, then you have a little bit of an easier time convincing somebody to build it.
I think that's totally fair. I think one of the challenges about being a non-technical co-founder also is that there's almost a social perception that you're not as valuable, right? It's not just that you have to prove value within the context of your relationship with your other founders, but that others will look at you and go, okay, but he's building the thing, so what do you do? Like, do you just hang out and order the pizza? Like, I think that there's a little bit of a misperception that even just having another person in your corner can provide a counterbalance against any bad habits or we all have insane ideas. I can name 40 of them that I had the first 6 months I was in business. And I was running it. Thank goodness I had, guys like you and Frank and, other folks to tell me when they were terrible ideas. Guys, can I post a link to an article that I trot out every year called 7 Tips to Getting Your Startup Together for the Coming Year? We would love for you to post that. Absolutely. But I think there's so many people who talk to me about how they look forward to running their own business because they can sit at home by themselves, without having to interact with other people. And I just find so much value in counterbalancing my ideas and my concepts with somebody else who can just bring another perspective to it, right? Who takes a look at it and says, you're an absolute idiot and here's why, or says, that's genius, let's go do that. And at least gives me some feedback.
It is useful sometimes to have a sounding board, to have a reality test to say, like, am I looking at this the right way? This seems too easy. And someone will say, well, yeah, that's too easy because X, Y, and Z. Or maybe they'll say, actually, that's probably worth doing because I don't see the problem with it either.
Yeah.
And you might still both miss the problem with it, but at least you've got two eyes on it instead of one. I think the other thing is, there's a lot of stuff in any startup that needs to get done that is not building the code, and anything that is, takes the developer's focus away from building the software. If you're in a software startup, there are plenty of other kinds of startups too. But if you're in a software startup, anything that takes your developer away from building the startup is a distraction, right? And so having somebody to manage all of the, make sure you've got the legal paperwork, make sure you've got, make sure you're starting marketing, make sure you've started, building your mailing list. You are reaching out to customers. You're doing things like UX testing. You're actually putting stuff in front of customers even before it's ready. Yeah,
I'm with you. Question: one way to get a bunch of free bunch of partners, mentors is to take desk at a co-working space. What are your thoughts on this? Well, as a bit of a co-working whore myself, because I go to many of them, I find a tremendous amount of value in co-working spaces. I think that they provide a focused environment for the right people in the right way. I think if you're going there to try to reproduce your college dorm, not great. If you're going there because you're looking for other serious people to try to find, common resources or common relationships, it's a phenomenal opportunity. The right co-working space is really important. Jason in the chat is mentioning the YouTube space in LA. I hear phenomenal things about it. I'm definitely visiting on my next trip out there. Teague and I both work out of WeWorks here in DC, which we find to be spectacular. Here in Washington, there's WeWork, there's Uber Offices, which is not associated with Uber, but is in fact the name Uber Office. There's Code, which is a productivity network that you can join. There's lots of different cool ways to utilize them. And I'm a big fan. I think that they're incredibly useful. Teague, what do you think?
I think they have their place. I think that, I have the Expedition has offices at WeWork, and I work out of there sometimes, but not all the time. I actually find that I'm very productive when I'm at home. And sometimes I need to, it's useful to go in and have meetings in person.
Yeah.
And I think, you need to know your work style and where you work well. And I think that it's worth experimenting with a couple different options, because you may find that, the reason things are hard is not the reason you think they were.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. I think I think it also depends quite a bit on personality. I am more extroverted than I am introverted. Shocking, I know. But I find it's hard for me to self-motivate when I'm not surrounded by other people, because there's not a voice in my head going, they're working harder than you. You need to go push harder. Teague has more self-discipline than I do, and he can work from home and be motivated properly without having the anxiety that is what I often refer to as my inner Woody Allen yelling at me. So, yeah, there's that.
And if we want to go back to the specific question, is that a free bunch of partners and mentors at a co-working space? Well, no. I mean, you're paying for your desk, right? You're paying to be part of this community, and that has value partly because it means that it screens out the people who aren't willing to put money on the line to be there, and that gets to what Jason was saying about it's not just your dorm. It's a serious group of people.
Yeah,
and are they actually partners and mentors? Not necessarily. Not when you just move in, right? They're neighbors, but because social psychology tells us that the single greatest factor of whether two people will become friends is physical proximity. You're more likely to build relationships with those people that you're working next door to, and they may become partners and mentors. It's the friendship stems from repeated random interaction or repeated unplanned interactions, and so being able to run into somebody getting coffee or beer if you're at WeWork is a valuable way to build that relationship.
What is it? Ron Swanson refers to them workplace proximity associates, I believe is the term.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've got 15 minutes. If anybody has any questions or wants to hear about any topics in particular, we're happy to take them. Do appreciate that you guys have been very active and has certainly given us a lot to discuss. So thank you. How do you know when you have too big or expansive an idea from, Jason with the awesome beard, or when you're trying to do too much? Teague, when are you trying to do? When do you know you've hit your wall?
Constantly. No, I think
a land war with Russia.
Yes, as Kiki says in the chat, does it involve a land war with Russia? That's a good rule of thumb.
Hi, Christine. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
So when it's too big or expansive an idea, usually it's when you can't execute on it well. It's if you are trying to do too many things instead of doing some piece of it really well, then it's probably too big an idea. Sometimes what you can do is build your team larger in various ways, whether you're raising capital or not, so that you can solve the bigger problem. Sometimes you want to do what's called a zoom in pivot. And when you've discovered that actually one piece of this is the thing that people care about the most, they may care about the other things. And this is one of those challenges, one of those ego risk challenges of you may get feedback that out of the 5 things you're trying to do, people like 3 of them, but doing all 3 of them might not be the best strategy, right? Yep. You still may be better off picking the one that people want the most and start there.
Yep.
It's not saying you can't do those other 2 things later, or when maybe you never will, right? Maybe you find that one thing actually is bigger than you thought, and it starts to spiral, and it becomes, as you dive in, the problem is fractal, and there's a whole lot of additional sub problems within it.
What have we talked about bringing math and geometry into this?
That's my job.
Yeah.
Is that what we decided?
Nice.
Yeah. Good. I mean, I think, from a business perspective, you will almost always do better being the best at one thing than being average at 3 things.
Well, again, to quote Ron Swanson, don't half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was another question.
Full of
what was that?
Ron Swanson today.
No, I am on a Ron Swanson kick because I'm jealous. I'm never going to have that mustache. Mine just won't compare. What do you think about if people are really prepared for starting their own startup? Many of them give up. So I guess the question is about can you clarify a little bit? So what do we think about if people are really prepared for their own startup? Are you talking about the transition from working for somebody else to owning their own business, or taking that first leap? Making baby. Thanks, Kiki.
I think there was a typo somewhere in there, but I don't know what.
Contraproductive, maybe? Contraceptive? I can't read. I will say this on the one topic regarding making the transition from working for somebody else to working for yourself. Interestingly, Teague and I both did this from the same company, albeit at different times and for different divisions. And
sort of.
Yeah. Because you started working for yourself after leaving there, right?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, there was an MBA in there.
Well, right. Okay, so you're smarter than I am. I just quit and went, I'm doing it on my own.
I would not say necessarily that getting the MBA was any smarter.
I'd save money. That's fair. And here we are both doing this. Boy, I'm definitely the smart one here. Hey, Sean. No, I think, okay, so the question was about owning a business and then giving up on it several months after. I would say, and Teague and I have talked about this extensively. There's
a great stat here too. Go ahead and I'll add.
Yeah, I want to hear the stat. There is the perception of life as an entrepreneur, and then there is the reality of life as an entrepreneur. And I think it's the same way that some people look at celebrities in films and think that it's all glamour and, red carpets and beautiful dresses and attractive people and all that. And the reality is it's 18-hour days in the middle of nowhere filming films that 9 times out of 10 don't do well enough to actually generate a real, profit. And that's not taking into account Hollywood's rather creative accounting. I think that in truth, there is really hard work that has to be done if you're going to build a startup. And I don't think it's the kind of stuff that goes away after 5 years or even 10. I mean, I'm 2+ years into, building my company, and it's not going to let up anytime soon. And it shouldn't, because this is what I want to do. And this is the stuff that I'm enjoying. And if you do it because you love it, then that shouldn't matter. At least I don't think so. Teague, what's your stat? I'm curious now.
So I can't find the exact stat, but I can give you the gist of it, which is the number of new businesses that fail within 1 year is much, much lower than you would expect, because 1 year is not usually enough to know whether or not the business has failed.
Right.
The number of businesses that fail within 5 years is very, very high.
Right.
And that's the piece of it is there's Sean in the chat says, I've got at least 13 months of determination in me.
You know what?
That's about right.
That's pretty good. I'll give it to you this, Sean. You got a lot on your plate there, buddy. 5 years is the mark. Yeah. Vanessa, you're absolutely right. I think there's something I'm trying to remember. This is why we need to do stats research ahead of time. There's something
for the questions that we don't know we're going to get.
Right. Well, but there's something to be said for, I think it's in the 2 to 3 year mark is where you start to see the drop off. And I think, for a lot of people, it isn't discipline. It's sometimes this isn't right. I mean, being in charge of payroll, being in charge of other people in a more direct way, really seeing behind the scenes about what legal, stuff you have to put together and what protections you have to think about and the levels of insurance you have to start. I mean, it's astronomical and it fucking sucks sometimes. Mine is slightly not safe for quote. Honestly, I have totally dropped F-bombs left and right, Jason. Feel free for the not safe for work quote. Success is like being pregnant. Everyone congratulates you, but nobody knows how many times you were effed along before you got there. Accurate.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stories in the media about the 10-year overnight success.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, this thing was a huge overnight success. It appeared on the scene out of nowhere, and nobody talks about the 10 years
right.
that the founders spent working together on various things and eventually finally hit upon a formula that
made sense.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, and I know people who have started stuff, run them for a year plus, and then decided to move on. Ultimately, some of it is timing, some of it is resources, some of it is experience, and some of it is just plain stupid luck. And, there are some people who can push through that, and that's admirable. And there are some people who, for whatever reason, it demoralizes them, or it makes them realize that it's not the choice in life that they're looking for and that their priorities are different. So, I don't think of it as a moral problem. I don't think of it as a problem of work ethic either. I think sometimes it's right for people and sometimes it's not, it's like,
and sometimes it's luck. Sometimes you're there at the right time and sometimes you're a little early. Sometimes you're a little late. One of the things that I love about the lean startup is that, because we acknowledge the fact that, the forces that you will exert on the market as a startup are minuscule compared to what the forces that the market will exert on you. A lot of it is try enough, like how many different times can you try something until you get the right one, right? You're not going to hit a home run with your first swing. And so part of it is getting more at bats.
Yeah.
You want to actually, have a chance to get lucky.
Yeah. Well, and Jason in the chat has it right. I heard on several podcasts, people that have a great idea, but check every 6 months to see if the timing is finally right. I think, boy, if that isn't the truth. Look, the problem can also be that you wait, opportunity passes you by, and if you're not ready to grab it, that's too late.
That's the luck favors the prepared.
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe it's chance. I don't remember the exact quote.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't know if you feel this way, Teague. I certainly feel that there are days where, I don't know if this is right for me. We've had this conversation a couple of times where you're up at 3 a.m. finishing a report or an RFP response, and you're like, you're on Angel List and you think, oh, director of blah, blah, blah. God, that'd be great. I love that company. Or managing director, blah, blah. Yeah. God, I've never even thought of that, but I'd be perfect for that. And you have those moments of, all right, do I really want to be doing this? Because I really could shut this all down and go get a real job.
Yeah, I think every entrepreneur has those moments, and part of it is, you get discouraged and you spend the rest of the night looking at job boards, and then the question is the next morning, do you feel like actually that could be a good fit, or do you feel like no, I couldn't leave the thing that I'm doing now.
Yeah. Teague, you to us at the Techstars Veterans Boot Camp. Well,
I did.
Yeah.
I did teach at the Techstars Veterans Boot Camp at GW a couple of years ago, and I think I made the same point, which is maybe what Dwayne is referencing.
Yeah. Well, you're super old, so not you, Dwayne. I mean Teague. I just want to be very clear about that.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
No, I the advice I always give people, and this I think wraps up with the conversation about founders too. Anything that you're doing, the people that you're doing it with, the thing that you're doing every day, if you don't love it, if you're not challenged by it, if you're not fully engaged with it, you either have to pivot, you have to niche down, as I think Point and Stare was saying in the chat earlier, or you have to move on. Because if it's not one of those three, I mean, if you're not totally engaged with it, it's a waste of your time. I mean, it's like working any other job where you're going there 8 hours a day and just desperately looking at the clock to be done. I mean, and then you're
never going to do your best work if you hate your job.
Right.
That's not saying that you have to love every moment of it, but you certainly can't hate it.
Yep. There you go. You're not the CEO. You're a bloke with a laptop and a WordPress theme. We sometimes call those people entrepreneurs. Anyway. Cool, guys. Well, I think we'll probably wrap it up here. Really, really appreciate you chatting with us today. Special shout out to Seth.
Questions.
Yeah, and special shout out to Seth for actually joining us today, because he was the only one who dared step into the StartupJab Dome. I need a better name than that.
We'll work on that.
The ring. Damn it, it's the ring. Damn it. It's the boxing ring. We're StartupJab. What is wrong with me?
Yeah, that actually is...
Shit. All right. Well, now that we've definitely gone explicit.
We'll fix it in the post.
The Startup Dome with Mad Max. My kid brother is Max. He's very angry sometimes. I should bring him. Witness me. Are you not entertained? All right, Teague, where can people find you?
You can find me at teaguehopkins.com or teaguehopkins on Twitter or startupjab.com, where you can find us both.
Absolutely. In addition to startupjab.com, you can find me at Jason Nellis on Twitter, or you can look up my company, overachievermedia.com. Happy to help folks outside of the realm of Startup Jab here, and whatever you need, we're happy to jump in. We're going to be announcing our guests in the next couple of weeks. If you are interested in hearing about them, you should join our mailing list, which is on startupjab.com, and make sure to follow both me and Teague on Twitter so that you can get up to the minute changes if something happens. But most importantly, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We know that you've got a lot going on, and we thank you for taking some time out to listen to us pretend like we know what we're talking about. Super exciting.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Everyone have a great day and enjoy the rest of your shortened week.